We'd like to welcome you to our home. I'm Joe, and this is my wife, Theresa. And we'd like to take this opportunity and thank the Lord for all that He's done for us, and to share Jessica's progress in her injury. She had a stroke, and it resulted in brain injury, and we'd like to tell you about that.
Hi, I'm Theresa, and I'd like to start off like Joe did, thanking the Lord for everything that He has done for our family. Next, I'd like to thank the doctors who were just spectacular. I don't even know what word to use, but they went above and beyond taking care of Jessica. And that was Dr. Reed, Dr. Goober, Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Doshi, and Dr. Rocky. Well, on January 3rd, Joe and I found Jessica in her room unresponsive. We noticed that she had vomited quite a bit. After calling 911, we went to the hospital. There, the doctor told us he was going to cut her to let her bleed out because her brain was swollen and she had a lot of blood on it. And he left, and then he came back and he said they were going to do something else. And we were so lucky that he didn't cut her, because he had conversations with other doctors and they said that would have killed her. Then they had Jessica in ICU. We were able to see her, and the doctor came up and told us that she was lucky that she lived, and if she did, that she was alive, but if she did live, that she was going to be worse than any other disability case he had ever seen. And he said, I wouldn't wish that on any of my family members or anyone that I know. And Joe and I said, well, Jessica wouldn't want to live like that. And he said, well, you better make up your mind on what you're going to do. And at that time, she was on life support. She had 5 machines that she was on. I don't know what they were for, but there were 5 machines. Sometime during her ICU, she was unconscious the whole time. The therapist would come in and move her legs and arms. And one time, a doctor came in and he said, she'll never move the right arm. And Jessica picked up her arm like if on cue and just moved it over her head like this. And he didn't know what to say. And then a few days later, the therapist came and he said, you know, and Jessica was barely in and out by this time. She would look around. She didn't know who we were, but she would look around and we would talk to her. Well, the therapist came in and he said, I think she can walk. I'm going to stand her up. And the doctor kind of looked at him like, no. And he said, I'm just going to stand her up and I'm going to see if she could take just a few steps on her bed, by her bed, on the side of the bed. Well, Jessica got up and walked all around her bed. And we were so excited. And that's when her recovery started. After some time, I don't know what time, they put her in therapy right there in the hospital. That was a little harder on us because we were always at the hospital with her, but her therapy, she was very hyper. She was really hard to keep still. She wouldn't, if we walked her, we had to walk her with a belt, which she didn't want to put on. She wouldn't stay in bed. And they were feeding her through a tube in her stomach. She could eat, but she wasn't eating. And she referred to everything as chicken. Everything to her was chicken, chicken, chicken. So we had a hard time conversing and finding out where we brought her every kind of food imaginable, because they let us bring it in to see what she would eat. And it was a hard time, but the family pitched in, and they said we were staying there too much because it was daily at the hospital. And our daughter and her husband said, Mom, you and Dad take the morning shift. She and her husband, Cameron, Jackie and Cameron, would take the afternoon shift. And my son and his wife, Joe and Ruth, took the afternoon shift. So it was a little easier on everyone. And oh, it was hard, and she was doing really good in therapy, other than the fact that she was really hyper. One funny incident that we can look back and laugh now is that her dad and I walked in one morning and she was laying in the bed, but she had her head at the feet and her feet at the head, and her hands were at her side. And her dad said, "Jessica, what are you doing?" And she said, "They told me to lay here and not move." And we just all laughed because we knew she was having a hard time being still. February 14th, Valentine's Day, she was released. And though she still was going to have therapy and physical speech and what do you call physical speech and occupational therapy. So we brought her home, and I thought, well, now that she's coming home, you know, she's going to feel better because she's going to be at her house and in her bedroom. Well, when we drove up, she wanted to go to the house next door, because she kept saying our house wasn't her house. Anyway, we managed to get her in, and she had a difficult time recognizing the house and her room. Just a really hard time with that. In fact, I went downstairs, and she had another room downstairs, and she had taken all her clothes out of her dresser drawer and kept saying that none of these were hers. But in time, we adjusted, and then other problems came up, and I'll let Joe talk about that.
Actually, this time period was from January the 3rd to February the 14th, and 3/4 of that time she was spent at intensive care, and the other 14 days was for rehab. And during this time she was unable to swallow, so they inserted a feeding tube. So the first thing, as far as care at home, is I had to feed her through a tube, and she refused to eat. So the big joke was, if you don't eat, you're going to get this can. And that can was like a milkshake in a can that you feed her through a feeding tube that was directly to her stomach. And that process is like putting soap into a straw, because it doesn't go down easy. It takes time. And so that was my first experience as healthcare. And then she progressed from that. Eventually we got that removed. And the bottom line is that this all this process caused her to have an injury to her trach. And during the process of life support, they injured that trach, and as it healed, she was able to recover somewhat. But her speech therapist, Allie, I believe was her name, noticed that there was something wrong with the voice box. So we had to look into that, and sure enough, she had ruptured the trach, which required a numerous number of surgeries to put a trach back in there, which caused a lot of problems. I became an instant respiratory therapist, having to suction that trach and remove it and sterilize it. I was a suctioner, Theresa was a sterilizer, and we made numerous trips to different hospitals with that trach. And finally, they had to do the surgery and put a T-tube in her throat, which she was not able to talk for like about 6 weeks, and everything was with a tablet and paper. But during this time, we found a tremendous scripture at one of these hospitals that read, I will, let me think here a little bit, I will restore your health and heal all your wounds. And that was our main prayer, Jessica and I and Theresa, every day as we went through all this, because it took 13 surgeries to fix this tube. And finally, at one hospital, they said that that's all they could do. They couldn't do anymore. And so the last resort was to refer us to another specialist. That he said really simply, had you come earlier, I could have fixed this. But there's so much damage in there, we're going to have to do more surgery. Imagine during this time that they're doing these surgeries, they put stitches in her jaw and tied to her chest to immobilize her. And that's the way she stayed for about a month. And then anyway, during this period of time that we got the new doctor, Dr. Mitchell, he says that it's very risky to do this surgery, and he would rather not do that. But Jessica continued to email it to the hospital and say, you don't have to worry, doctor. The Lord has healed me, and He's going to use you to put me back together. And what a fantastic news we got. And he says, well, it could go wrong. It's not 100% guaranteed. And Jessica says, it doesn't matter, I'm healed. So they performed the surgery, and this time we made like 21 trips to this hospital for different procedures. And they finally put it all together, and all I can tell you is it's a blessing from the Lord that Jessica's health was restored, and all her wounds are healed. And her main purpose in life now is to serve the Lord and do what the Lord wants her to do, which is spread His word, to tell everybody about Jesus. We thank you for this opportunity to share this, and if we have any questions, you can contact Jessica.
Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.